In California, in North America, there is a national park called Sequoia National Park. It's actually a short drive from my house. In this park, there is a tree that is about 2,500 years old. It is the largest single-stem tree in the entire world. But the question here is, what does large mean? Because it's not the tallest tree in the world. Is it the widest? Is it the heaviest? And if it's the heaviest tree in the world, I have no idea how they weighed it. How do you weigh a tree without picking it up? So I actually don't know what the word large means in that sentence. Let's talk about large for a minute. When you see the word large, it could mean something is heavy, or if something is tall, or how wide it is. And there's different ways we measure these different dimensions. If something is heavy, we can measure in pounds or grams or kilograms or tons. We measure elephants in tons because, well, they're huge. If we want to measure like the height of something or the length of something, we can use inches or feet or yards or meters or kilometers. I know in the military, sometimes they call kilometers clicks. I got to run 2 clicks, but I'm not military. I just measure stuff in miles. When we measure even larger distances, we use light years. The point here is that we need to know which dimension of large that we're talking about. But let's get back to trees for a minute. When you follow the road up, you see the signs for the Sequoia National Park. Sequoia was a man. He was a Cherokee man, and he became famous for creating a written version of the Cherokee language. He is one of the most influential Cherokee people. When the national park in California was being founded, the world was still mighty impressed with a man named Sequoia. And when they saw those mighty trees, it reminded them of that mighty man. So they named the park after him. And when you go into Sequoia National Park, there are a bunch of trees there, and some of them have names. There is the General Sherman tree and the General Grant tree, and a few others. They were named after American Civil War generals. By the time most of the trees were discovered, the United States was still very much impressed with the leaders of the Civil War. So there's actually a lot of history just sitting in the names of these places. But today is not about history. Today is about measuring. The species of these giant trees is called Sequoia dendron giganteum. Literally, the name of the species is called gigantic, and it grows nowhere else on Earth. But the question is, which one is bigger, the General Sherman or the General Grant tree? Now, the General Sherman is 274 9/10 feet tall, and the bottom girth is 102 6/10 feet all the way around. If you were to measure the General Grant tree, the General Grant is 81 7/10 meter tall, but has a volume of 46,608 feet cubed. But none of those are the tallest. So let's look at those details about the Grant and the Sherman again. The General Sherman is 83 8/10 meter tall, but has a bottom girth of 102.6 feet and a volume of 1,486 meters cubed. In this instance, I used meters to describe the length. I use feet to describe the girth, which is all the way around it. And I use meters cubed to describe the volume. But you will notice I can't say weight. I mean, how do you even weigh this thing? Okay, anyway. Let me use the same units of measure to talk about the General Grant tree. The General Grant is 81 7/10 meter tall, but has a volume of 1,319 8/10 meter cubed. Now I can compare the numbers. Now that I'm using the same units to measure, now I can compare them. The General Sherman is about 2 meters taller. And the General Sherman is slightly wider too. So if the General Sherman is a little bit taller and a little bit wider, I can definitely say the General Sherman is a little bit larger. Even though there are lots of ways to measure big or large, we're only going to talk about tall today. The General Sherman is 83.8 meters tall, which is about 274 feet tall. So see, now I'm using two units, meters and feet. If I want to compare them, I have to use the same unit. The General Grant is 81.7 meters tall, which is about 278 feet tall. But those are trees. Those are very tall trees and very, very old trees. There is something on this earth that is taller than those trees. There is something on this earth that is 829.8 meters tall. It is the tallest building in the world, and it is almost 830 meters tall. It is almost 2,722 feet tall. So let's compare those, all using the same units. The thing about trees is that there's nothing to do with them. You just let nature do its thing. I mean, sure, the scientists are always checking to make sure the tree doesn't have any diseases so it doesn't fall and people don't get hurt. But overall, the objective is to leave nature alone. Leave the tree alone. Don't chop it down, don't climb it, just leave it alone. However, when we talk about buildings, there's a little more to do. Can you imagine working at the tip-top floor of the Burj Khalifa? Can you imagine how long it would take to ride the elevator to the top floor? But does the building sway in the wind? Look at the design. It gets skinnier and skinnier. How do the water in the faucets get all the way to the top of the building from the water underground? Is there an apartment or something near the top? How does the shower work? The hot water. Like if I turn on the hot water, is it going to take like 10 minutes for the hot water to turn on? I don't know. I have so many questions. I have so many questions. And look at the windows. Someone has to clean those windows. I mean, it's in a desert. The sand is blowing. It's going to stick. Someone has to clean the outside of the windows. Wow. There are 2,348 windows on the Burj Khalifa. One crew can wash 15 windows in 15 minutes. How long does it take to wash the windows? That gives me more questions. Does it take the same amount of time to wash 15 windows on the bottom floor as it does take 15 windows on the top floor? How many can they wash in one 8-hour shift before they go home for the day? Like, what if you're like 15 stories up and you got to go home for the day and then you go back down? Like, you spend all your time going up and down, then you did washing. Well, unless the windows on the top floor open. Maybe doing the windows at a rate of 15 windows in 18 minutes is an average rate. Maybe the people doing it have no fear of such dizzying heights. I'm telling you, I got a lot of questions. I'm hoping you have a good mind and you just have a lot of questions too. But now I'm very curious about this. How long does it take to wash all 24,348 windows with that crew? Here is your job. I want you to tell me how many minutes it would take that crew to wash the windows on the outside of that whole building. But most jobs like that get paid by the hour. But then actually, if I was the person hiring the crew, I would need to know how many 8-hour shifts that is. People work in 8-hour shifts in one day. So let's say one day is one 8-hour shift. How many days of working is that? So you're going to have to figure that out. The minutes, the hours, the days. So let me set you up so you can solve this. So the first thing you're going to do is draw a number line. I'm kind of lazy in the fact that I don't want to draw two number lines, so I'm just going to draw the top part and the bottom part like this. So the top part will be windows, and the bottom part will be minutes. And I know that 15 windows takes 18 minutes. So if I just double that, then 15 times 2 is 30, and 18 times 2 is 36. But that's not even close. So I'm going to multiply that by 10, and I get 300, and then I get 360. But I'm still not even close. I'm going to multiply that by another power of 10, which would give me 3,000 and 3,600. But I'm supposed to get 24,348 windows. Maybe I should just multiply that 3,000 by 8. I think this is the best bet using this double number line. I mean, my lazy single number line. Could you figure out how many windows I could wash in 1 minute and then go to 24,000 windows? Or should you figure out how much it takes to wash one window? If you can figure out the unit ratio, it makes it a lot easier. But if you don't like my double number line, you can just make an equivalent fraction. If you know from my other videos, I kind of have a thing for fractions. So I would write down 15/18, and that's windows to minutes. I like to write it down that way because I usually forget which one's which. So then I have to make an equivalent fraction with this as the numerator. So you can use the number line if you want, or you can use an equivalent fraction if you want, but that's your job today. How long does it take the crew to wash 24,348 windows if one crew can wash 15 windows in 18 minutes? I'm going to need the answers in minutes, in hours, and days. Remember, the days are only 8 hours for the working man. So good luck. And you know, you are the kind of person who can do hard things. And I got to tell you, this is going to be pretty hard.